Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of my How To series. In this episode, I meet with Megan Rose Medium, who is an incredible psychic, remote viewer, and channeler. She is incredible, and I was so excited to be able to partner with her in this episode to talk about discernment in the spiritual world, discernment between the light and the dark, and discernment within our physical reality. So, our goal was to take the fear out of connecting with the spiritual realms. And there is a lot of fear around that. So we hope that this episode will help you trust yourself, trust your experience, and give you the tools that you need, especially for those that are realizing they have psychic abilities. So join us now. Hey, Megan. So, what is discernment and why do we want to do it? Why is it important in our lives? And what kind of different areas does it cover?
I think discernment is a really important topic that we should talk about as spiritual, practitioners. Anytime you open up yourself to the spirit world or other energies, you're always going to want to learn discernment. So there's all different kinds of frequencies and vibrations that we can kind of be exposed to. And one thing that comes to mind is if you think about maybe the physical world, how you may have some friends that you might want to hang out with who vibe really well or mesh really well with you. And then maybe there's some, other people that maybe you're like, whoa, I need to stay away from you. And it kind of goes like that when you connect to the spiritual realm as well. There may be other energies that you want to connect with that could be really enlightening or helpful to you. And then there may be other energies that may be not so helpful. So I kind of think of it like that. And with the discernment, I think that it's something that you may not have right away when you first start connecting. It's something that you kind of have to learn over time. I know how I kind of learned was a little bit of trial and error, unfortunately, but that's kind of how it goes. You kind of like get comfortable with experiencing different types of energies. And then when it can be kind of scary too, like at times. But then once you get more comfortable with yourself and trusting yourself, that's when you can really just kind of get going and know what you're connecting with and trust your gut and trust the other side and what you're connecting with. And it can be really, really valuable to you. So.
Yeah, just you talking about that made me think about when, I had been connecting with spirit since I was really, really young. And again, people do know this story a little bit, but I wasn't necessarily taught the right way to we can communicate with anything.
Yeah.
And that's why they say with Ouija boards, it's like, don't do it because anything communicate with you.
Right.
But what they don't teach is that you can tune into certain higher frequencies, angelics or higher loving beings. But that's not what we're taught. So when I shut it off for so long and then came back into it, I had to go through that process of trial and error. And I said, okay, I'm ready to connect in the ways that, you think I'm ready for. But along with that, I also had to learn not just the angelic light stuff,
Yeah.
as beautiful and amazing as that is, I had to also experience the challenges and some of the lower frequencies, so that I can be able to learn discernment and as well as teach discernment. And it was a little bit like, I don't know if this thing is benevolent or malevolent. And you have
Yeah.
to move through that process.
Right, exactly, because there's just like a huge landscape of what you connect with. Like when you think about how big the universe is, it's just there's so much that you can connect with. And my experience was much like yours. Like when I was really little, I was basically just an open channel to anything. And so I would have a lot of night terrors. And because I'm very mediumistic, I could actually have beings speak to me and tell me certain things. And a lot of them were not so nice. So I kind of like joke with myself, like it was almost like the sixth sense growing up a little bit.
Mhm.
But But then there would be benevolent spirits who were past family members who would come to me, and that was a different experience where they would try to, you know, help me or just want to communicate what, you know, whatever with me. So I think too, another thing that is helpful is realizing too, the kind of the first step to connecting would be to get to know your guides and make an intention to know, you know, who's protecting you over there, who is really looking out for your best interests. And usually, you know, people will have a couple guides at a time, or it could be many, but there's usually at least one guide who will step forward when that door opens to make that connection. So I know when I first started to I decided to open that door again, because I was a lot like you. I kind of shut it off. I was like, oh my gosh, I do not want to experience any of that ever again. And then when I decided to open that door again, of course, there was benevolent beings and guides waiting for me. And, you know, I had some, you know, weird experiences or different experiences getting to know the spirit world, but they were always there to kind of guide me. And even though maybe I didn't feel so safe at times, they really actually had my back and made sure that people and the right teachers in the physical world came into my experience to help me gain my discernment in that arena. So, yeah.
So when it comes to, because you said like it's good to get to know the guides, you know, and there are different ones that step forward and for different like, you know, frequencies that we have within us wherever we are at in our life. So
Right.
what if we have a guide that's also like maybe a lower frequency being, because there's, you know, what if that happens? How do we work with that?
So, yeah, that's a good point. So, I think one thing that comes to mind with that too is there's a lot of maybe shadow work too that people forget about. And it really starts with your own personal soul development. So, a lot of people will come to me and they'll be like, I think I have psychic abilities. I want to get into all of this. And one of the first things I ask them, and I say, you know, do you meditate? And usually the answer is, no, I don't like to meditate. You know, I don't like to sit there. And I'm like, well, that's the number one step to kind of getting to know yourself. And then you'll also pick up on the shadow aspects and maybe some traumas that you've been through that need healing, so that when you make that connection, you won't always have that many experiences, or that won't be necessary.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I was, you know, connecting again, I would see all this beautiful angelic energy. And then from time to time, not all the time, from time to time, I'd be presented with an opportunity to access a shadow aspect of myself that I was ready to receive. So whatever, I believe that whatever we are met with, it's because we have the energetic capacity to be able to look at those things. And
Right.
even if it's a little frightening, it's like, well, this is an aspect of you that you're seeing, and you're spiritually strong enough to be able to meet it and to see the reflection of yourself.
Right.
And I know that I had to move through that process to understand what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that you brought that up, because I literally was thinking about what you just said before we started that anything that you meet that could be perceived as negative or a shadow aspect, it's met and it's come into your experience for you to transcend it. And so you're never going to be put in front of an obstacle that you can't overcome or that you can't transcend. So yeah, it's all for a rhyme or a reason. I think one of what Spirit was telling me before we started this conversation, they were like, yeah, bring that up. So it's funny that you brought that up. And then they were talking about that's the harmony within the universe. And you can't have the good without the bad. So you can't have the good experiences without the bad experiences, quote unquote bad.
Mhm.
And it all just kind of meshes into this beautiful universal flow. So yeah, it's funny that you say that.
Well, it's also interesting because, like, literally 7 minutes, I looked at the clock, 7 minutes before we popped on, I noticed this very different energy around my head. So this
Yeah.
energy set, and then I like sat here, like, I was like, it must be because I'm meeting with Megan so that this would happen, because for some people that I sit with, there
Yeah.
will be energy that presents itself right before the session. And I
Mm-hmm.
always know that it has to do with the person that I'm going to sit with or meet with. And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, I was like, because I'd never felt that particular kind of sensation, almost like a donut around my
that's
head
so cool.
that
I
felt
wonder
like
if
it
it
was
was my
pertaining to
spirit
you.
people.
Hmm.
Sorry. Yeah, I wonder if it was my spirit people coming to talk with
Yeah,
you.
because it felt different. It did.
Yeah.
It felt different. It felt different than even the intense energy that stepped forward the other Friday. And it was just very different. And I was like, whoa, that's different. So it must be like, Derek, you're going to need a special helmet to connect with Megan today. And they're all,
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
so this is very, very good because a lot of people have a lot of fear around
Yeah.
this whole thing. And what we're doing is we're changing the narrative from having
Hmm.
fear to spirit connection. And this is why I think so many people stay away from it. They don't even
Yeah.
want to do. My brother does it. He's always scared that he's going to go to the bathroom and he's going to see a demon standing there.
Yeah. Or like in the mirror or something. Yeah.
Yes. And so he'll post memes about it because he's very aware that there are real things out there. He knows through me also that spirit connection is very real. And
Yeah.
so, but he has shadow aspects maybe because if he's thinking that a demon's going to wait for him at the entry of the bathroom, then,
Right.
then
Yeah. And one thing that comes up too, so with the discernment, and once you're kind of aware of like the negative entities and then the positive ones, once you kind of overcome those obstacles, they don't really mess with you that much, or they're not really as interested in connecting with you because they don't like to be identified. So,
right.
one thing that I do, and I know that I talk with you a lot about this, they're very easy to see when you're outside of your body, like an astral travel experience or like a deep meditation. And so, one thing that I'll do when I come across one, I will just say, I know what you are, I identify. And then usually they'll go away because most of the trickster energies, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to trick you.
Hmm.
And they can kind of tell if they can, by your energy, if you're susceptible to that or not. So yeah, that's one thing that comes up.
A really good way that I've learned to discern between what she just said, what you just said. I was talking to them, the hypothetical them.
The third
Um,
party.
with the third party, what you just said was that if let's say it's in a dream and you see someone that is so friendly and so bubbly and nice in this
Right.
real life, they will appear
As
like
a,
them. Yes, it's
mhm.
like they'll come different. Like there's one guy I know that's very spiritually connected. But in my dream the other night, he was in it and he had a red rash all over him and he was acting different. He looked
Yeah.
like him, but he had this rash and he was acting different. So they'll appear as people or things that you trust and think are really friendly, but there's
Yeah.
always something wrong with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'll be able to see like so it'll, present themselves as something super friendly and you'll kind of look, you're like, "Oh," but there'll be something off with the energy. You'll be like, "Oh, that's kind of there's something wrong. I don't know what it is, but it'll be like this thing in you where you're like and a lot of times too, I'll notice they might start talking funny or they might start like because I'm clairaudient, like they'll start there's something wrong with their voice. It's almost like I hate to say it's like a scary movie, but when you see something like that or a scary dream or a scary movie, it kind of is like that a little bit, but it's not. I don't want to put fear on people. It's not really that scary.
Yeah.
But that's a really good point.
Well, look at me. I'm like smiling the whole time. I'm like, yeah, that's it. Because think about if I'm smiling about what we're talking about, it's because what you're saying is so true. It's like it's this illusion that they're presenting so
Yeah.
that they could entertain and they mask as something else because they don't want to be identified.
Right.
That's how they keep the game up. But it really is an illusion in a game, and it's something not to be concerned over or worry about. And that's
Right.
why while you're saying that, I'm sitting here smiling like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And one thing that comes to mind too, like it's actually easier or it becomes easier to identify this stuff in the spirit world because it's harder to hide the energy when it doesn't have a body, right? So, like, if you meet someone in person, like maybe you work with someone and you're like, oh, they're so nice, or they present themselves this way, it may take you like 6 months to figure out, oh, that's not someone that I want in my life versus it's a couple seconds in the spirit world where it's just like, oh, you know, you pretended to be this, haha, the joke's up, you know.
Yep.
So it's actually not as fearful. It's actually much, yeah, it's much easier, much clearer. Yeah.
I think in the physical world, the game is also different. So when people are here in this physical experience, they have learned how to play the game in order to make it last 6 months. They
Yeah.
know that how to get someone to believe what they're doing. They know how to, this is a, there, it's a different set of rules within the physical world than it is within the spiritual world.
So
And
true.
they're playing by the certain rules in this. And that's why you come 6 months down the line and a girl figures out that the person that she's dating is actually doing all this other stuff,
Right.
because the truth does come out at some point or another. But
Right. It's so
yeah,
true. And the laws of the physical world are a little bit different. And there's different energies like money playing into our survival needs and, yeah, stuff like that. So it's a little bit different. Um, but I would say, too, another topic that comes to mind is kind of, and I think we touched on this a little bit earlier in the conversation, but really the self-awareness that will help you as well in the physical world as working with spirit. And I think the more in alignment you come into yourself, the less that will happen in the physical world, and you'll start to notice it. And then that the less that will happen in the spirit world, and you'll start to notice it. So so yeah, I just really want to like stress to people too who might be watching this is just the need for meditation to disconnect from the physicality, because where you get clear is really sitting with your own energy and getting to know your own energy, because discernment comes with knowing yourself and knowing what you feel like. Like I spend twice a day sitting with my own chakra system, and I'll check on each chakra and feel like how I'm feeling that day. What does my energy feel like? So when I have those experiences, I'm like, well, it's definitely not me, because I think some people can mistake that energy for themselves or for their own energy, and that can be confusing too. So there's a self-awareness aspect as well.
yeah. And just to piggyback on that comment, especially highly intuitives and sensitive people, and when I say sensitive, I mean people who can sense the extrasensory stuff, like the
Mhm.
non-physical experiences, will know that they take on energies. They know that they're taking on other people's energies and then not being like almost clear enough to be able to see that it isn't theirs, that
Right.
it is something from the outside, and then being responsible for it and learning how to clear it. For example, before we even met on here, I was meeting with a client, for like an hour and 15 minutes. And even though everything was positive and uplifting, I also don't want that to color any present moment experience that I'm having with you. I want to be a clear channel. So
Right.
after I sat with her, I sat here and I cleared my chakras and I pull in and I clear my energy. I like vamp up my aura, or my energetic field. And I really clean my own energy and make sure that I'm tuned into my body. How does my body feel? Am I re-energized? What do
Yeah.
I need to do? So really, this topic of knowing yourself and being really self-aware of what your body is doing, what your mind is thinking, trying to be as clear of a vessel as possible. And the trick is that to meditate, to sit with stillness, to be with yourself, and to stop thoughts so that you can allow yourself to see clearly. That's a huge, huge one. And a lot of people just won't take the time to develop their meditative skills.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of distractions in our world too with social media. So I remember when I first kind of like got the call to do mediumship, I literally deleted all my social media, Instagram, Facebook, everything. And I was like a crazy person. Not crazy, but I would meditate. I would meditate for like 3 hours a day, and it would take that long to get my mind to clear itself, because there were so many different thought forms that weren't serving me because I wasn't self-aware and I hadn't been doing that spiritual work. So it was very like kind of like an intense, I guess, intense experience or an intense time to really dive deep and to let go of my own fear, my own negative thought patterns, And so, yeah, that was a period of development that I would not, I would not take back. And I was going through a lot of life changes at the time. And I will tell people this too. What you'll notice when you start to meditate, because your energy will be clearer, you'll start to attract different experiences. Like your whole life might change. You become more abundant. The doors for opportunities will open. You might start finding, it's kind of like the dark night of the soul, right? Like you start thinking, maybe this career that I wanted for so long, I don't want to do that anymore. So it's really, you start to learn who you are. And so, yeah, it's super important with anything, but especially psychic abilities and mediumship too.
Well, that's where, sorry, as you said that, that space of taking the time to meditate where we took those longer periods, I
Yeah.
know that it was that 45 to an hour mark where something different would happen. Like, because
Yeah.
I settled into that space. And, the first 10 minutes to me is that the mind is calming down. You're still having thoughts come in. But as I'm doing that, the things I need to remember or little inspirations come in that 10-minute block.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually look at that 10-minute block like, oh, anything I'm not paying attention to will show itself right here.
Right.
And then I trust that eventually my mind is going to calm down. That 45-minute hour mark comes, and that's where visitations were starting to take place. My abilities, my clairvoyant abilities, like visionary experiences that are beyond what I can even explain, but you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And many people that do have visions will understand.
Yeah.
It's where the abilities are now being allowed in.
Yeah.
And old energy, old programs are being allowed to be cleared out. But if
Right.
we're constantly doing or acting or being or thinking, we're not letting that energy, it's just kind of building up those old programs, and we're not
Right.
allowing it to release from our system.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, because your mind has to be clear in order for those higher frequencies or those higher energies or any energy to come in and give you a thought, give you an impression, tell you a message. And so a lot of it is too, you don't want to have all these thoughts that you're not aware of, and then you can't discern between the messages that spirit is giving you and your own thought patterns. So a lot of people too, it can be you just don't want to, when you're doing a psychic reading, you don't want to project your own self into that realm, and then you're reading from your own energy versus receiving it. And that's kind of where that thought space happens in meditation, and learning it and knowing what it feels like becomes really helpful.
Yeah, and knowing how you are receiving that information, because even though we're talking about this, it is a very personal experience, and you have to move through the practice of it, and people do know that they have any abilities, but it has to be massaged, it has to be curated, it has to be really fine-tuned, and that's an amazing process. Like the things that I know now that I just trust myself with because I know without a doubt what's going on
Yeah.
allowed more abilities to come on. Like I do past life regressions for people, but at this point, I can be talking to you and I do get a mental image, not the projection of light stuff, but like I get the mental image of someone's past life very often now. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
get the energy of what was going on. I'll get what they look like just so that I know the time period it's in.
Right.
And it amazes me. But that's because I allowed the process of developing how I'm being communicated with.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point too. That's awesome. And yeah, so it's not going to be from like 0 to 60, any like medium, like professional medium, or anyone doing spiritual gifts or spiritual abilities. They weren't born that way necessarily. It's just an ability that was cultivated over a period of time, because the need for discernment is very important too. And oh, I just lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was going to say. Um, yeah, the need for discernment is really important. So if you can imagine, like, you just find out you're a medium, you have spiritual gifts. If you open that door and you have 10 spirits that come forward and they're like, I'm so and so, and you're going to feel you're going to feel very afraid, and you're not going to know what to do, and it's going to be spirits, and the other side won't put you in that position, and that's why it has to happen that way. So it's a lot of patience and just going with the flow of your own development and trusting that you will get there eventually. So yeah, that's a really good point you brought up.
For a lot of people that might, they know that they have guides or angels or or ancestors. Really, I think the ancestors are really the most accessible things for people to connect with and know and trust, because they know that they're like, they sense their grandmother or they sense their father that passed. So they know that they have ancestors, which is a very good accessible way to the spirit world, but it's a way bigger than that. It goes way farther than that. And when we say ancestors, that could be really far ancestors from ancient civilizations and from other star systems, because this isn't it. So when I say ancestors, I mean anything you're really connected to, that your soul is connected to in an energetic form, and they will start coming forward. And so when I first started saying, okay, I'm ready to receive you, it was like they were like, thank God, finally. It was like I was pushed into this thing, because every day I would receive new spirit friends, and I would see them and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this being came and da 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 da. And then I'd be like, ooh, they're going to come again. I hope they come again tomorrow. And then a new being would come. And this was a constant process for quite some time, because there had to be so much integration really fast for me to do what I'm doing now. They had to supercharge it and get it like, and I'm getting a wave down my body as I say that. So they're like, yep, that's right. You needed to get that hyper speed. So it was able for me to be, in this space. And I had to go through a lot of learning, or a lot of remembering, I want to say, and a lot of learning how to remember how to trust myself, because I spent so many years of not. And a big, I think, thing with discernment is trusting yourself. If you feel something, is off, just go with it. Like, feel it out, but interrogate it. Ask the question, what is going on with me that I feel this way? Angels and guides, or spirit friends, ancestors. Why do I feel this way? Can you give me more information about it? I think a lot of people forget to ask that question.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's something that comes over time. And another thing that comes to mind is, unfortunately, the way that the human society with religion and everything was, I guess, programmed, or there's a lot of belief systems that we've been indoctrinated with. Like, for example, I was raised in a Catholic family, went to Catholic school for like 12 almost 13 years. And so in the Catholic religion, they basically just teach you that if you connect with anything, that it's demonic and it's the devil, and you may or may not need an exorcism. So
may or may not.
May or may not. So there's a lot of fear too that has been programmed into us. And that's where meditation and self-awareness comes in. Like, hey, I might have to undo some of these belief patterns. Maybe I thought that this is bothering me more than I thought it was. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it too. And then just trusting your intuition and trusting yourself, because we're all given that inner compass of trust, right? And have you ever noticed too, like, as you become more aware, if you notice something was off just in general in life and you didn't listen, and then something like a negative experience happened, or something happened to make you realize, like, hey, my gut instinct was right on point, I just ignored it, and now X, Y, or Z happened.
Yeah. And that happened with my car before this one. And I look at it for the purpose behind it, but still, I got a very strong impulse. And I actually think this was supposed to happen, because I needed to let go of the energy that I was holding on for that long. The car was fine. It like was with me for a long time though. And it was time to release that old energy, because it had so much to it that couldn't come along. But before I left the house, it was like, I was like, I need to go so for 20 minutes of cardio. 20 minutes, that's all. And I could have ran around the block. And I was like, no, I have to go to LA Fitness, get on a treadmill,
Right.
walk up a treadmill for 20 minutes because my ego wanted
Yeah.
me to go do some fat burn
Yeah.
so I could keep some abs. And so I stood there at the front door and I literally was like, God, I do not want to go. I don't want to go. And then I hear like a message like run around the block, don't go. Like I just hear it, I feel it. And I literally said out loud to the guides and I said, I know, but I need fitness. I need fat burn. So I'm going to go. And I fought it at the doorway and
Yeah.
then cut to the whole thing. I drove to the gym 20 minutes at the thing. I didn't even do resistance training. And I was driving back down Hollywood Boulevard and then the T-bone collision
Oh,
happened. So it was very clear that I received a very strong message. And I think that that's what the experience was about. Learning discernment between my feelings and my thoughts,
mhm.
learning messages from spirit, learning how to really fine tune those things. And I look at it as a fun process. And honestly, that served me because now I know that feeling. I know the difference. I know when I see a picture in my head. And it
Yeah.
really took moving through it to discern it. And that's
Right.
like our physical experience. That's like the physical things that we experience. So it should be applied to human beings we come across as well. You
Yeah.
should start sifting through that.
Yeah, exactly. And like I know for myself, like I am super stubborn with my guides, or I had been for a long time. And so I would always ask them, it was kind of like a game. They probably laughed so much at me, but I would ask them, what should I do with this? What should I do with that? And they would, give me their advice and I'd be like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And then like we just have to go through this thing for like 3 weeks where my energy was off and I wasn't listening. And so, like, my experience has been a lot of periods of not listening and then realizing, oh, I should have listened because my human ego wanted to do what I wanted to do, but they had a higher plan. So, yeah, that's part of it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be, and that's a really good point. When your energy is off, you can't explain it. It's like, well, what are you not paying attention to in your life that you need to be looking at? Like, what
Mhm.
is it that you're like neglecting, not looking at? And that's why our physical experience with anything is literally telling us. So even if I'm at the grocery store again and someone's and I'm in a situation where someone's rude to me or something, I go, oh, I was like, wait, what's going on with me? I kind of take ownership over it and I
Yeah.
go, well, you knew you didn't want to come here, so you were showing up to the grocery store with a bad attitude anyway, Derek. You didn't want to go get your groceries. And it's like, oh yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and like that's a good point of like taking ownership of your own ego and your own energy, but not, this comes with discernment, not taking ownership of other people's energies
Yes.
or the I guess you could call them entities, energies. You don't want to take ownership of your experiences with that too, or their energy, so to speak. So, because that's really important because you'll have to transcend it, and it'll lead you down a path where it will be a good experience, but it's just knowing yourself and then knowing other energies. It all plays a big part. So
So how do you, so on a personal note, when you
Mhm.
do a lot of mediumship readings, a lot of psychic readings for people, and you bring in channeled information as well, how do you personally like discern between where you're getting information from, and how do you personally trust the information you're getting when bringing through a channeled message and the information that you're getting for a person that you're working with?
Right. So with mediumship, when I make that connection, I always look for my guide right when I put my mind into the spirit world. And him and I will kind of like telepathically talk. And I always make my intention. I only want family and friends of that person to come through. So if they're looking for a soul to come through, I only want family and friends. Because otherwise, if you just go and you're like, oh, please, anyone come through, you'll get anyone, or you can get someone pretending to be someone, right? So and I always trust that my guide he always jokes like he's the TSA at the airport, or he's like the FBI. He's like, because I'll ask him, I'm like, everyone is good up there, right? And he'll show, he's like, yep, I'm the TSA, and he'll show him checking everyone. I'm like, okay, it's just for me, you know, like his imagery for me. And then like psychic information or anything like that. Um, that's a good question. It's literally just the frequency or the vibration that I'm at. So, one thing, so a lot of psychic readers, they might more read closer to this dimension or closer to this plane, and they might pick up on like auric fields or stuff like that, which is closer to around the body. And then I use a different, I just go straight to the spirit world, straight to that, on that frequency, and I'll see stuff that way. So I just, it's the recognition of that vibration. It took me a while to develop that that knowing. Yeah.
And just, this is a really good topic too, because, you know, I do more of channeled work. So when I'm speaking with somebody, I don't even think about what I'm talking about. I just let whatever's coming through me come through me. And I just like hope for the best. And you, but that's not to say that I don't see those images that I told you. But generally, what happens when I'm working with people is that I'm just speaking to them, and the exact example of what they're going through will come out of my mouth, or the exact thing. And it's not even a picture I saw. It'll just be what flows out as the example. And they'll be like, oh my God, they're like, and so that takes a lot of trust within myself too, because I have to just fully go in with full trust in myself. But what I do is what you do. So this is where it's very similar, is that I want to be a clear channel for people. I don't want Derek, ego Derek, if it's your friend Derek, or your brother, your family member Derek, I don't want him to give you information. I want channel Derek to give you information, where I open up and it's pure light, it's pure information. And I've made it to a certain point where I still tune up. I tune up before every session, and I ask for highest guidance. I tune into my heart here, and I say clearly and honestly for all of these places, all these chakras. I say clearly and honestly, because it has to be pure information for these people that's going to help them in their life. So I tune into those higher aspects, just like you do. I tune into the higher self, angels, and whoever's the highest that needs to come forward for the person. And I even did a session with my brother. He finally like let me do it, and he got to hear channel Derek, which was very different than Derek brother. He got to hear channel Derek, and he was just like locked into it, hearing it, receiving the vibration. And then the very next day we got into an argument. And I said, okay, now you're going to get brother Derek. And I gave it to him, and I told him how I felt, how Derek felt. And I was all, you can tell the difference between what you experienced yesterday as channel Derek and what you're experiencing now as brother Derek, can't you? He's like, yes, very much so. I was like, okay, good. I was like, you see how I can flip that one off?
Exactly. And that's a good point too. Like, even though you're this person who can connect to the divine or can channel divine messages, you're still a person, and you can still have feelings and experiences. So there seems to be too, sometimes like in the spiritual community, well, you should, if you're connected, then you shouldn't act that way, or you shouldn't have human experiences too. And it's really, you know, we're all just humans making a divine connection. So that's a good point.
It's like, we're all just humans making a divine connection. How much are you going to let it in?
Yeah. How much are you going to allow it?
Yeah. Because everyone, the energy is all around you all. It's around everybody, and it's just wanting to come in. And your chakra centers, your aura is picking up this psychic information from the field. Like you said, you're like, it's close to the body, and people are psychics can pick up information from the auric field. And that's where they're taking in psychic information, and it translates in the brain and becomes their reality. And so it's just so important to really understand that the energy is all around you. And if you tune into it, you can hear it, feel it, see it, and sometimes taste it, smell it. And I mean, even while we've been speaking, I can see the spark of light off to the side here showing up, standing there.
Mhm. I love
And
that. Yeah.
and I usually have clients sit on this couch and I'll sit in my chair over there. And I love it because this white wall allows me to see all the angels and spirit friends that show up around them. And I'm
Hmm.
like, and I warn them, I go, listen, if I look up, I'm not looking away from you. I was like, but I see light that will appear
Like,
around you. And I love
yeah.
it
And like
because,
another thing,
yeah, go.
sorry.
No,
Yeah,
it's
like
okay.
another thought that I had like as you were talking is people just starting out and tuning into their psychic abilities. It may take some time for your brain and yourself to get used to that frequency or that really high vibration because it takes a lot of energy to get to that point. So you're kind of you're it's like a whole transformation. Your body has to get used to channeling that and your brain has to get used to it. So a lot of people, when they're first starting out, they are just picking up off the auric fields. There's nothing wrong with that too. But just so they know, give yourself some time and have patience because that connection can be made. It just takes a long time to sustain it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and that's a really good point with, many people know that I receive vibrational light transmissions. And I know that's hard for some people to like really compute if they're not in this world.
Mm-hmm.
But I do share that with people who sit with me because if they're sitting with me, it means they're ready for the information that's going to come through. That means they have the same vibrational frequency or else they wouldn't be there, right?
Right.
So I do tell them, and what's been amazing with me telling them about the kind of earthquake experiences within the body or the light transmissions is that I watch their eyes light up. It happened this week. Multiple people, they're like, wait, there was like an earthquake and I thought it was an earthquake. And I told my partner that like, I was like, did you feel that earthquake? And I go,
Oh my
no, it
God.
was literally happening for, it's just for you
You.
because you're getting cleared from old frequencies and you're getting upgraded and your body, we have a physical experience. So your body has to get ready to hold and encompass more light frequency in order for you to do what you want and what you came here to do and fully get into that energy body that you have. It's like getting
Right.
upgraded and people have headaches all the time and
Yeah.
I'm like chances are your energy body has like upgraded, your frequency raised. Now your physical body has to catch up to it. A lot
Yeah.
happens. But you can only tell certain people that because they won't get it.
Yeah, and like you can be tired for tired for a couple days, and it takes a while too, and that's where like this awesome aspect of the healers come in, and the people that do the DNA activations and the healing frequencies and the sound healing. So yeah, it's all we all have these nice resources that we can call on to help us out. So
And even with those like those experiences that are like energetically intense, it took a lot of discernment for me too, because they're so intense that you don't understand what's happening.
yeah.
And you're like, this isn't because when that happened to me, Megan, I had never heard of that happening to anybody.
Hmm.
No one ever talks about that. I didn't know what was going on. All I know is it's happened so many times. The last one was what, 3 weeks ago? So it goes in waves with me.
Yeah.
And I'm not really afraid to talk about those things or be looked at as weird because I know that people need to trust this experience, learn discernment, and know that there really are beautiful forces that are helping them to awaken to their highest loving aspects, which is really
Yeah.
what it is all about, raising vibration to those loving aspects.
Yeah, totally. And one thing to keep in mind, I've had tons of people, have tell me about experiences like yours. And one thing to keep in mind is the higher energy beings, they feel like a lot of energy. It can be overwhelming and it can also manifest like before I do readings, like before, like around that morning, I'll start to feel really, really anxious. And it's just because their higher energies are meshing with mine. And it's not bad, it's just a higher frequency that my body is trying to get used to.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's totally a good point, too, as well. And that comes with discernment, just knowing, okay, it's just this, but it takes time to learn what it is and not to be afraid. So,
And I think that it's really important to also communicate the feelings that you're having with that non-physical energy and and your guides. So if it is intense and you don't know, communicate. This is really intense. Please give me reassurance or guides only. I would say when other things would come, I would say only unconditionally loving beings are welcome to connect and communicate with me. I send you so much love and I appreciate you for wanting to connect. I said, but only unconditional love, only my highest guidance of the light is welcome to
Yeah.
communicate with me. And so that, because when you do that, you set your frequency on that higher vibration, and then those things can't communicate. They can't connect with you
Right.
because you've set it up that way.
Yeah, exactly. It's your intention. And I remember like when I was first waking up, I remember waking up or waking up spiritually, you know, but when I was actually waking up from sleep, like in the middle of the night, I could feel, and I had like the high pitched ringing in my ears. I could feel something around. And I asked, I said, "Are you good?" And it started to send me like all of this love and make me feel comfortable. But also, I, in my humanness, I was still a little bit scared because I'm like, this is the middle of the night and you're in my room. What are you
Yep.
doing? But like I noticed the higher vibrational beings, if you'll ask them, they will send some type of love transmission, excuse me, or some type of love vibration to make you feel like, okay, I can trust you. So
And that's
yeah.
what has happened, the other day when I did receive a weird image and then an energy set into my body. And I was like, I was fearful at first. And I actually said no because I thought it was the thing that I had seen trying to connect, communicate with me. It was a new energy that was very intense. And I said no. I was like, absolutely not. And all of a sudden, when I said that, they reassured me and they sent it into my heart. And I was like, oh, all right, well, have at it. And and I
Yeah.
opened up and I was just like, okay, thank you for the reassurance.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll send you that love vibration. I haven't had like I'm trying to think of an experience. Sometimes when something that's not so nice gets too close, it'll feel like very chaotic, or you'll
Yes.
start to feel that chaos and you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're not who you said you were." And then it'll go away. But yeah, totally. It's just the vibration too, which is interesting and cool.
Yeah, for you're right. Chaos. And if you like don't feel the energy, but you can see it, it shows like to me, it shows up erratic energy. So it's not this
Mhm.
beautiful, loving, flowing,
Right.
high like beauty. It comes from like for me, it comes at a distance and goes, and it's just like staticky, erratic energy. And that's when I'm going,
Yeah.
listen, I know how to discern
Yeah.
between this and that. I'm like, and I just, but what do? I send it love because it doesn't
Yeah.
want that. It wants to
Right.
play around.
Right. And what is so interesting too is once you start to make a pattern with the universe or with those types of entities where you're either going to give them love or you're going to heal them, a lot of them, they don't want the healing. So they're going to avoid you at all costs because if they're healed, then they are not that energy anymore and they
Yep.
lose that sense of, I guess, that sense of self or that sense of identity.
Yep.
So a lot of times they'll just start to stay away from you
That's
after a certain point.
exactly what I've experienced. They're just like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they actually, that's literally what has happened. They'll be like this, and I'll say that love stuff, and then they'll be like,
Yeah.
and they'll literally trail off and like go do something
Uh-huh.
else. And I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna.
Yeah, because it's much easier for them to like connect with somebody who maybe has like unfortunately a lot of addictions or a lot of habits where it's can invite in those darker energies or they can enjoy working through those frequencies with them. So yeah, so they kind of really once you get more spiritually in tune, they kind of stay away from you, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. This has been such an amazing I mean, literally, we could go on forever about
I know.
everything, but I think that that is enough for like digestible information for everyone that's gonna listen. I think this has been such valuable information that I'm just like, oh my God, I was even thinking of like, I feel like it just needs an even thicker title just because it's like
Yeah.
such valuable information that like will help people that are having this experience. And if anybody takes anything away, you saw us smiling throughout the whole thing.
True.
laughing, talking about it, because it is nothing to fear. And discernment is just an ability to show you how clear of a seer you are, how powerful you are, and how much you trust yourself in any experience. And that's why I'm lit up, because that's what I've taken from my own trials in discernment. And we will always have those new levels to match up to and more power to gain. And any opportunity or any challenge we get is an opportunity saying, look how much light you embody now.
Mm-hmm.
Look how much powerful, more powerful you've become. And it's just a mirror reflection of that power, I think. So
Yeah, I totally agree. So yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. And of course, it was a pleasure talking to you as always.
yes. So wait, say your social media stuff so people can
Okay.
know. But I'll put it inside the thing anyway.
Okay. Yeah. So Instagram is Megan Rose underscore medium. And then you can also find me on YouTube, Megan Rose Medium as well. So yeah, come check me out.
And then if people want readings from you, should they just message you on Instagram or?
Yeah, that's fine. Or my website, meganrosemedium.com.
Perfect. Amazing. I know that we'll have more conversations like this in the future, and I would love it for us because we did go into some of the mediumship and the psychic abilities, and I think it'd be great that we've kind of helped people dispel any fear and learn how to discern, to give people practical tools on how they can develop their psychic abilities or do different
Yeah.
things. So I'll be looking forward to doing more. And of course, you hear droplets of interdimensional information coming through. So I'm sure that will be more of that as we move along. So thank you everybody for listening. And I'm Derek Jameson, and I hope to see you in our next episode.